All right, so we are live.
Okay.
Day 2 of CoinGeek Week. What are your initial thoughts so far?
Initial thoughts are it's been quite a couple of weeks, as we all have experienced the cash and the split and everything, and hasn't turned out how I thought it would be. I thought, CoinGeek is a very surprising event. It's actually very powerful. It's very positive. I thought it would. It's actually very powerful. It's very positive. I thought it would. I thought it would be a lot more subdued and a lot less positivity. But it's definitely showing to be the beginning of a vibrant community getting behind BSV.
Yeah.
That is definitely the initial sign.
So you just gave a presentation that I just told you, but I will repeat this for everyone to look forward to watch too. It was actually, I've watched a lot of presentations about why you should care about Bitcoin. Your presentation for me was the most succinctly well put explanation as to why Bitcoin is very important. You referenced one of my favorite quotes of all time, which is Hayek's quote about introducing sound money, where not doing it violently by doing it in a sly, roundabout way.
Absolutely.
In which they cannot. And do you just want to maybe just for the people watching?
Yeah, I can repeat that. And I think Hayek is an absolute brilliant reference for anyone in the cryptocurrency and Bitcoin space. So the idea, Hayek is a proponent of denationalization of money, of private money, and he's an absolute proponent of governments not being an efficient mechanism to manage money. And he admits, and this is in the 70s. I mean, this is the foresight of this man. In the 70s, he presents ideas of how to denationalize money. And he also says that he's convinced that governments will never give up their monopoly on money. And he says it openly that the only way we will be able to dislodge this monopoly that government has of money is if we are, by some way, sly way to bring it about, that they can't stop us. And that is exactly what Bitcoin did. It's an unbelievable fruition of Hayek's foresight.
Do you think something we've talked about a lot, but Hayek was all about. He talked a lot about planning. His, especially in his book, The Road to Serfdom, he talks about economic planning and central planning. With the way Bitcoin has evolved, it's been at the whim of people that I think want to do similar planning on top of Bitcoin. In the case of BTC, what are your thoughts on the way that, how do you view Bitcoin in how it's been handled, I guess, by really developers are in some capacity, if they, in a way, Satoshi was a planner, right? He created a system,
so
he put rules and set.
So what I would say is the central planning and socialism always starts from wonderful, lofty dreams. And what happens is, so you create a central planner, and then what happens is when the data starts to go against you, and in a sense go against you being the problem of the central planner, your lofty ambitions get replaced by saving your position. So, and that's partly why it fails. And secondly, why it fails is it's just inefficient. Everything, the intricacies of any market or industry are too complicated to centrally plan. That's definitely Hayek's viewpoint. I think when I was coming up to the hash war, so with BTC, if we go back to BTC is an assumption that blew up into a roadblock, a tiny assumption that blew up into a roadblock, and they shot themselves in the foot, unfortunately. I was absolutely a proponent of BTC, and what happened is, like, someone put a doorstop. And so, that can happen. It can happen medically. Let's say you got like a little thorn in your foot and you don't treat it, and your whole foot goes septic and you lose your foot. And to me, that's kind of what happened in BTC. It was a little doorstop. People started obsessing about it. People started screaming about it. Before you know it, you've got this little doorstop that's causing this absolute infection, and that's crippled BTC on chain. And then they moved to this whole complex solution, which hasn't proven itself. Maybe it will. plenty of smart people say it won't. So I think it's, we need to live in reality.
And what do you think about this whole hash war situation?
So I think the hash war, I would have much preferred it didn't happen. I think what the good side of it is that it was quick. It was 2-3 months of screaming and shouting, and then it's over. And that it's split. I really would have preferred for us not to split. The technicalities and the reasoning behind it, I think, weren't necessarily the absolute driver. There were some social reasons or political reasons that wanted to separate and fed up of certain characters being involved, which I think was unfortunate and should be irrelevant. Money has no smell. You shouldn't really care. When the US government pays out Iran, they pay them with little papers with American presidents on them, and the Americans are happy to pay them, and the Iranians are even more than happy to pay. So what, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but it was an untenable situation. So it is what it is. I think both camps are absolutely passionate about global money. They're both passionate about denationalization of money. They have a different approach as far as minimal technical changes and certain technological developments to scale, and zero changes and absolute stability and absolute change. Zero. So those are more or less the camps. And then there's kind of political and social issues that come about, and dislikes and personals. So, and we are where we are. So we just need to embrace it. And the good side of it is also the bad side. The bad side is the split, but the good side of it is now each side has a clear competitor.
Absolutely, yeah.
And every sportsman will tell you that the competition makes you better.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, I think, there was one thing that I was slightly, and now when I look back, I was slightly concerned about Bitcoin Cash. Everyone was kind of like, we're moving along, we're growing, this and that. Now it's kind of game on,
Absolutely.
One has to win, or one, both can be around or whatever. One has to be dominant, I think.
Do you have a opinion that you want? I mean, I know the problem is when you make an opinion, it puts a target on your back. But do you have an opinion?
So I have a relationship with both teams and both guys, and I don't think anyone is disingenuous. I think they're all working on it. I'm in the preferable or the preference position that I don't need to make a choice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't need to choose, so I won't. But yeah, so that's I wish everyone the best of luck, and whoever. The key is adoption.
Yes.
The key is adoption. The key is the big earth movers and getting them on board and going on.
A common misconception in the cryptocurrency space, was they think Bitcoin, takes down traditional banking systems. And I like in your presentation that you see banking systems actually adopting Bitcoin and bringing
Absolutely.
it in, and it just being overall a just much more efficient system. Could you maybe elaborate for our viewers what you meant by that?
So first of all, banks will always want multiple suppliers, multiple liquidity suppliers, multiple service suppliers. And unfortunately, they're absolutely dominated by central banks when it comes to supplying the money. And that has advantages as fractional reserve banking and being the lender of last resort. But banks are going to, banks, why wouldn't they want another supply of money if it was available and reliable? Banks are not just money providers. They provide a critical aspect to the economy. There's no question about it. Roads wouldn't get built, houses wouldn't get bought, bridges, hospitals, universities, financing, lending, mortgages is an absolute critical aspect of building an economy. So while we don't like that the banks seem to always make so much money out of while there's necessarily economic downturn or issues, the real reason for that is that because they're so close to, or one of the reasons for that is because they're so close to the money supply. They're sucking directly from the central banks, and central banks are causing boom and bust by manipulation of the interest rate. So banks at their core are a phenomenal force for good, for economic growth. And by bringing good, stable money, non-inflationary money, that will enable banks to provide greater and more powerful services. I don't see what I think, the massive companies that have grown, Coinbase, Blockchain Info, and others, there's good argument to say that they will develop into banks. Why not? Mm-hmm. Or maybe they won't. Maybe those financial services providers. But anyone who says that banks are terrible but still uses an application to process their crypto is kind of like being disingenuous.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
right. Yeah. You had a great answer when someone asked about stable coins earlier. And I guess the question I ask you is something that I don't see talked about enough. Do you think that this market of cryptocurrencies where we have exchanges that are operating with things like Tether and these other hundreds of cryptocurrencies, do you worry that as long as these exist, we're introducing inflation into the cryptocurrency ecosystem? Where price isn't actually, like the price of one Bitcoin isn't actually being determined by a market, for example? Does that make sense?
So I would say, in stable coins, I think they're a technical solution for moving around fiat. That's what they are. Just like blockchain is a technical solution for back office management and processing and monitoring mortgages and other aspects, and may have efficiencies, may not have efficiencies. That's something to debate. So they're not a game changer from that point of view, stable coins. I'm sure they will add value to exchanges and maybe ease of use, but it's a technical solution. And I think there's this constant want from the banking financial world to adopt cryptocurrency, but not to have cryptocurrency. So the first solution was, hey, blockchain's amazing. Let's just talk blockchain, but don't, believe me, don't touch Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. Now we're kind of getting stable coins, but don't touch. So, it's kind of how you feed, how you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. But and as far as inflation, I think Bitcoin is still not a monetary system. Yeah. Okay, so we've got cryptocurrencies have got investment railroads and investment infrastructure built around it and custodial services. So there's big investments, but we're still not a monetary system as in really building an economy and economy service and banking services around Bitcoin. And I think once all these kind of, we're like at the bottom level competing and fish hopping around and everyone's trying to get at the table to start feeding. So I'm less concerned about the competition affecting Bitcoin. There'll be certain that'll rise. There'll be certain that'll be dominant. There could well be one that is massively dominant. And as long as that one is non-inflationary, then it'll bring the promise of it will add to economic freedom. And I'd say there's obviously a lot of talk about decentralization and everything like that. I think once we get a situation where we've got multiple coins which are non-inflationary and private, and let's say if you took BSV, BCH, if one starts getting dominated because it's not decentralized now and start making issues and start messing with the money, it'll be very easy not on an infrastructure level, but on a personal level, it'll be very easy to move into BCH from BSV, and it's one of the further aspects of the competition between the two. The competition is to trade between BSV and BCH will be seamless.
Yeah.
So I'm less worried about that being an issue. The real issue is getting mass adoption. Yeah. That is what it's all about.
So maybe we can talk about GAP 600, which I think is a critical tool to achieve mass adoption. Ryan had a quote, you mentioned it in your presentation, he had a quote that every problem with Bitcoin you can solve with Bitcoin.
Yes.
Right? And we talked with him about that a little bit yesterday. Your service is essentially an insurance service for instant transactions.
Yes.
Right?
So we're not an insurance company, but it can be compared to an insurance type service. Yeah.
And how are you solving Bitcoin problems with Bitcoin?
So we guarantee zero confirmed Bitcoin transactions, BTC and BCH. Payment processors and exchanges who want and in my opinion, absolutely should provide instant customer service, can outsource the risk of accepting a zero confirmed transaction to us. They'll send us a query of a transaction hash, very simple API call. We'll respond, confirm or not confirm. And then once we confirm it, we'll guarantee the value of the transaction should it be double spent. So we'll do, we don't require integration. We score every single Bitcoin transaction that's published on the network, monitor propagation, monitor double spend attempts, and then we take the risk. So we're analyzing Bitcoin, and there's this perceived risk of transaction failure. And why I say perceived risk, there is a real risk. It's relatively small, but because there is some risk, and because it's money, everyone holds back. So it's more of a perceived risk. And so we've specialized knowledge in the space, and we outsource this as a service. Absolutely purely Bitcoin, no integration.
Do you think it's a misguided attempt to try and fix zero confirmation payments or instant transactions at the protocol level? Do you think that, because I think
from what we've seen and from the service we've developed, and I've shared this with developers in the space, you can double spend the protocol. It can be done. It is solvable by developing a service like ours. It doesn't have to be solved from the protocol level. I try not to give a direct opinion on the protocol level, because it's easily to say, well, you've got a vested interest. So, but what I would say is what we do. We solve it. Yeah. So, if the protocol level, well, that's definitely not going to happen on BSV. There's not even a question about that.
Yeah.
BCH, if they're looking, I've told them straight out, I think there's, I personally don't think there's a necessity. The BCH has an idea of developing double spend proofs. I don't know if that's going to be adopted by BSV. I think it's a great idea. It's essentially once any node sees a double spend attempt, they notify the network. Mm-hmm. I think that's a brilliant idea. There's Bitcoin QT who's got an idea about relaying double spends. I think they already do it now. Yeah. I'm less mad about that idea. But our personal opinion is that it's absolutely solvable on a business solution.
Well, I'll say I'm an unbiased person. I actually am embarrassed I never heard of GAP 600 until earlier today. And as soon as I heard it, I was like, yeah, thank goodness, like this exists, because this is it's a market solution solving the problem, right? And so I hope to see more market solutions on top of Bitcoin that solve these problems.
Well, it's just a free market will provide.
Well, and I think
it's a matter of time.
To get at the beginning, I think if you do make a change to the protocol, there could be those unintended consequences.
That's the absolute risk with the protocol change, is that there's always a cost.
Yeah. And
what is that cost? And there's if we bring it back to economic theory, Bastiat, I believe, was the first one to talk about the seen and the unseen. And it's a very powerful sentence, because even if you think you are clever enough to see the unseen, there's a shitload that you're not seeing.
Yeah.
And things are going to change a year down the line, and then what? And then you're stuck with this thing in the protocol. So it's very, and I think generally the BCH developers do have that understanding that it's something to absolutely consider.
Absolutely. Well, Daniel, thank you for taking the time. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys. I very much appreciate it.
Reiterate again that anyone should watch the presentation. First of all, it's beautiful. The slides are beautiful, but it got right down to the core of what excites me about Bitcoin. I think what excites just about everyone at this conference.
Absolutely. It's the economic freedom. And I would mention that I came to these ideas through Bitcoin. I mean, I've studied economics at university and here and then, and I never knew about Austrian economics. I'm quite embarrassed to say till I came through to Bitcoin. And Roger Ver was the first person he's got a great presentation about economic freedom.
Absolutely.
And that was what set me down this road of this presentation. So
Roger has a book. It's Economics One Lesson. If you had to recommend a book for people to read about economics that excited you, what would it be?
About economics?
I guess just in general that has influenced your thought with respect to Austrian economics.
So I would say Henry Hazlitt, Economics 101, definitely. Yeah. One lesson of economics.
Yeah.
And there's an enormous amount of information out there on YouTube accessible. Murray Rothbard has a brilliant book about the gold standard. I forget the name. Also a fascinating book, and it details the value, and so there's no shortage, and you don't even have to go down the book route. It's all out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Well, thank you for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.